Welcome, UCL fans, to our Season 2 Week 14 preview. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. I, of course, recently got married and was not able to focus on trying to get these done. I was watching the UCL in my spare time, but I just haven't been able to actually sit down and record. Just been went on a small honeymoon, nothing too big, and then coming back to work, and then now I'm trying to find time to sit down and do this, but I am able to at least work on this one now, so it took me a little while to get back into the groove of things, but we are coming back, week 13 real strong. Before we get into that, if you do enjoy this video, I hope you leave it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more UCL content. I try to release every Friday and Tuesday. Sometimes it'll show up on Wednesday. But before we get into the preview for it now, I didn't have time to do like the different matchups on the graphics that I usually have for it. So my apologies for that. But I did also, since it's been a few weeks, I want to take a look at our rankings going into this week and do a little discussion with it. So, as we can see over here, we have 16 through first, Tulsa Talon Flames, South Beach Slow Kings, Long Island Reggie Rockies, the Grand Canyon Greninjas, Philadelphia for Alligators, Newcastle Neo Kings, Toronto Kiss tied for 10th, the Manchester Magnazones, Bristol City Blazekins, Tucson Terrakions, and then the next several teams have the most for playoff contention. Pittsburgh Pichus, they need to win all of their matchups, and then I think actually I have to double check because I think did they compete before? Hang on, I'm just all over this. Let's see, Pittsburgh Peaches. I'm looking on my screen for where they were at. They faced off against. Okay, so they haven't faced in, and did they win week two's matchup? I have to go back into my notes to see what we have here. So, no, that's not. That was week one. It was week one. So I'm just going back. So yeah, Pittsburgh Pichus have a chance to make playoffs. What needs to end up happening is they need to do. They have the St. Louis Rampardos in week 15. If I was looking at the schedule correctly, yeah, Pittsburgh Peaches have the St. Louis Rampardos in week 15. They need to defeat them, and then they also need to hope that the what was it? So what really has to happen, it's really an odd mix for the fourth place contention. Pittsburgh Peaches must defeat the St. Louis Rampardos in 2 weeks in Week 15, as well as their Week 14 matchup, which we'll get to later on who they are going up against. They have to hope that the St. Louis Rampardos lose this week's matchup, which is actually going up, I believe, against the Carolina Keldios. And the Carolina Keldios basically will need to lose in week 15 for it. So if that happens, I mean, Bronx Bearticks, Durham Druddigons, Real Moril, guaranteed for playoffs. Doesn't matter what happens at this point, guaranteed playoff winners. Carolina Keldios, St. Louis Rampardos, Pittsburgh Pichus are in kind of like, that anything could really happen at this point for it. If Carolina defeats the St. Louis Rampardos but loses in their Week 15 matchup, which would be where are they at? Which would be against the Real Moril, which is a very high possibility that they could end up losing, then I don't know. Yeah, if the Pittsburgh Peaches win the next two matchups, one of which is against the St. Louis Rampardos, Carolina Keldios have to at least defeat the St. Louis. I think. I don't know. Is there a way they can all? No, they all can't have the same record in the end for it. Pittsburgh needs to win the next two. Carolina needs to lose one of the two matchups. St. Louis has to lose the other one. So, like, all right, again, I'm not even going into the previews. I'm just talking playoff stuff right now because it's so close to playoff time right now. Carolina Keldios have to lose to the Real Moril, That'll put them at let's say if Carolina Killdeals win the next two matchups, they make the playoffs no matter what. But if they lose one matchup, that would put them at 10 and 15. If Pittsburgh wins the next two matchups, and they would also be at 10 and 15. But because they defeated the Carolina Killdeals, Pittsburgh Pichus move on to playoffs. If the St. Louis Rampardos win the next week's matchup, but lose against the Pittsburgh Pichus, and the Carolina Killdeals win their matchup on week 15, which would be against the Real Maril again. Hard to say if that would end up actually happening, considering how well the Real Marils have done this season. Then, as long as Pittsburgh wins both this and next week, Pittsburgh Pichus still have a chance. Will still be able to make the playoffs. If basically Pittsburgh Pichus must win to make playoffs in both, or to have a chance at making playoffs for the next 2 weeks, they have to hope that the St. Louis Rampardos and the Carolina Killdeals lose at least one matchup. Now, the Pittsburgh Pichus, if they win both weeks, and at least St. Louis and Carolina lose once in the next 2 weeks, the Pittsburgh Pichus will move on because then they will have about the same records. Because then, yeah, they would all be 10 and 5. However, Pittsburgh Pichus defeated both. Well, they've already defeated the Carolina Killdeals, and the St. Louis Rampardos is their Week 15 matchup. And if they win, so essentially St. Louis can win next week, and then Carolina loses in can win on Week 15 as long as Pittsburgh wins the next 2 weeks. So that's what would end up needing to happen for Pittsburgh to win. St. Louis just needs to win the next two matchups to be, any of these teams just need to win the next two, but Pittsburgh has more to lose because they can win the next two, but if Carolina or St. Louis also win the next two, then they will make it into the playoffs because whoever. Well, we'll get into more of that later, but this is, where the standings are right now. It is a very close tight for that last playoff spot. It's really going to be hard to say who's going to win it. I mean, St. Louis not having the best performance compared to their season one, where they were the ones that only had one loss, and now they've had four. Pittsburgh Pichus have really made great improvements, and so have the Carolina Killdeals. So I'm just going to look on the screen. I'll leave up the rankings for now, but I'm going to look here at the matchups that are taking place now. Even though I don't have the things made up for it or whatever, which I'll hopefully try to have done for my review next week, I will already say this much. The hype match of the week doesn't matter any way you slice it. Carolina Killdeals versus the St. Louis Rampardos. Like I said, this will help actually mold what the playoff picture can be. Now, if the Carolina Killdeals win and then they also defeat the Real Maril in Week 15, they are guaranteed that spot. If St. Louis wins and then go on to defeat the Pittsburgh Pichus, they will win that slot. And then it doesn't matter who wins as long as Pittsburgh wins the next 2 weeks, which will bring us up to our our second matchup, which will have the Pittsburgh Pichus versus the South Beach Slow Kings. South Beach Slow Kings have not been on the grist. They're in 15th place. There's very little chance that they will win. I'm not saying that, they don't have a chance at winning, but they just have to form like the best possible team to have a chance at winning for it. Whether or not that'll actually end up happening, who knows? We'll have to wait and see for sure. So let's move on. We have the Tucson Terrakions taking on the Manchester Magnazones. The Manchester Magnazones have been very impressive this season. I would not be surprised if they pull out a win. They still could end up, they've been so well this season. I've been very happy seeing this compared to season one. Not a single win. Started off 2 losses in the first 2 weeks, and then have just been rocketing forward ever since then. Obviously they've kind of bounced out. They're like 6. I'm sorry, I'm just going around everything for this. What are they right now? They are 6 and 7, so a little bit on the negative. They can still potentially win the next 2 weeks. For them, because they have obviously Tucson this week and then Tulsa next week, which we'll get to them in a little bit here as well. They could end up on a positive. Who knows? Tucson if they want to keep up on the positive, they will need to win, I think, at least one more matchup for it. And that would have to kind of be this week because their opponents next week are going to be very difficult. But That's for next week. Tulsa Town Flames this week are going up against the Bristol City Blazekins. Tulsa Town Flames, the coach, Kristen, aka Cuddle Death, has not been able to compete in the last couple weeks. I think this last week just could not get the Mons ready in time for the battle. Previous 2 weeks before that, where it's just unable to actually get the recording programs to work. I think, or it was something along those lines. She updated us. When she had to forfeit the second week matchup of what exactly happened for it, but um, we have they they're in last place right now just because they've only had one win, and they haven't been able to battle for the last 3 weeks, which is a shame because I really wanted to see this team battle. And hopefully we'll get to see it this week. Hopefully all issues will be resolved and we can actually have the battle this week. I can't wait to see how it will go down between Bristol City Blazekins and Tulsa Town Flames. We have up next. We have the Newcastle Nido Kings taking on the Grand Canyon Greninjas. Grand Canyon Greninjas have been steadily getting better. Right now they are 4-9. I think one of the Tulsa Town Flames forfeits were to the Grand Canyon Greninjas, giving them an automatic win. I know the other was to Philadelphia for Alligators, and then also the Tucson Terrakians from this last week on it. Grand Canyon Greninjas, not exactly had the best of luck utilizing their Mons properly. Like to have fun sets. I mean, this is not meant to be a super competitive league by any means. It's supposed to be a fun entertainment type of thing for it. We're not expecting to see big time Wi-Fi battles here for it, but it's still nice to see having good competitive style battles. But I mean, they have been competitive because a lot of the matches have been close to the time limit draw on it. Um, but it's just I'd like to see more. They have such a powerful team. I want to see them utilize it more. If that makes any sense to it. Um, Moving on. I mean, this team could forfeit the next 2 weeks if they really want to, and end up still getting playoffs no matter what. It is our first place team, the Real Maril, taking on the Philadelphia for Alligators. Philadelphia, of course, had a hard season right now. I mean, they're 5-8. They definitely got better over time. Weren't happy. Didn't have the greatest draft. Did not get any megas. The only team without a mega as well for it. But they've been definitely improving. They've been, whenever they do have a battle, they make it really good. I think even in this last week, just checking my notes from week 13, I think, yeah, like only used 4 out of the 6 Mons that were brought when they went up against the South Beach Slow Kings. Roselia and Tokikis, neither one of them hit the field during their Week 13 matchup for it, and still ended up winning. Has a good chance, but the battling style of the Real Maril is just too great, I think, for the let's player of PK Sparkstad Hotness. I wish him the best of luck in his matchup. I just don't know, if he'll be able to be prepared enough for this matchup. Up next, we have the Durham Druttiguns taking on the Toronto Tokikis. My bad. Toronto Tokikis, 5-8. They weren't able to. I mean, they almost got a win this last week. Who'd they go up against again? I'm just looking through my notes. Yeah, they lost to Grand Canyon Greninjas. Just weren't able to get the momentum on their side to actually get the win. It was really close. It had to come down to, trying to flinch to death, which did not work out in the heated most favor this time. I mean, he is the Hacks guy, but you can't always win with Hacks on it. Durham Dragons have been very impressive. Like I said, they had a chance of making playoffs in Season 1. They were just unable to actually, due to personal reasons, had to drop out near the last, 5 or 6 weeks of the season, which was a shame. Would have liked to see what they would have done. But obviously, I mean, unless something pops up now, they're definitely making playoffs. There's no way around that. Up next, we have, I don't think I mentioned this one yet, we have the Long Island Reggie Rockies taking on the Bronx Bear Ticks. Long Island Reggie Rockies, another one of those teams where, the coach Nips has done, he's been in other competitive Wi-Fi scenes with, the GBA before, and I don't want to necessarily say, I was expecting expecting more, but in a way, I kind of was expecting more of him. Now, I'm not saying that he's had terrible matchups because like all of his matchups have been really close, really long, drawn out matches that have been so close to the wire on it. I mean, like I said, he hasn't had the best of luck with some of his plays on it. He's had to forfeit a couple times, like at the end of the matchup, not like before the matchup for it. Just to like what would be the point of drawing it out? There was no way of winning, so just end the matchup there for him. Let the other team have their win. Um, I'm trying to look through. I think that covers just about all of the battles. I know this isn't my standard format for this, and I apologize for it. I hope to have things back to normal for week 14 and even the week 13 review for it. But just as a little recap, Bronx Bearticks taking on the Long Island Reggie Rockies. South Beach Slow Kings taking on the Pittsburgh Peaches, which has some playoff implications in it. If Pittsburgh Peaches win, they're kind of in that wild card spot right now where they could potentially win it if the other teams have the right losses on it. Tucson Terrakions are taking on the Manchester Magnazones. The Tulsa Talon Flames taking on the Bristol City Blazekins. We have the Newcastle Nido Kings and the Grand Canyon Greninjas. Real Maril versus the Philadelphia Feraligators, the Toronto Tokikis, and the Durham Druddigons. And then finally, the hype match of the week, because this is all going to involve what will happen. This will shape the playoff picture as we know it. St. Louis Rampardos, Carolina Keldios. Right now, both are, of course, in a tie for fourth place in a way. I mean, the differential, this is just for our purposes. They don't use differential in the actual UCL itself. So it all comes down to who beat who in the end for it, which is why this is so much of an important matchup. If Carolina wins and then they have to win the next two to make playoffs. St. Louis Rampardos, same thing. They have to win the next two to make playoffs. Pittsburgh Peaches, they have to win the next two, and they have to defeat. They basically like Pittsburgh is the hardest one to say for it. Pittsburgh has to win the next two. They have to defeat the St. Louis Rampardos in Week 15 and hope St. Louis defeats the Carolina Keldios or that the Carolina Keldios lose in Week 15. And then they will make playoffs. So these three teams still in the playoff hunt. Let me know what you think below. Who of those three, those are the wild card teams, we'll call it. Between the Carolina Keldios, St. Louis Rampardos, Pittsburgh Peaches, who do you want to see in the playoffs most? Do you want to see the newer faces in the playoffs? Because Joey Pokegame MD, the coach of the Bronx Bearticks, winner of Season 1 and the Little Cup during the offseason, are in the playoffs. The Real Maril, I think they were in the Little Cup playoffs, but did not win. I think they ended up losing. They lost in the semifinals for that. Durham Druddigons, of course, new to the playoff scene this time, was unable to make the playoffs during the regular season just due to having to bow out of the competition halfway through it. St. Louis, of course, were in the finals for Season 1. Carolina Keldios, Pittsburgh Peaches did not. I don't think they were close to making it. I think maybe Pittsburgh were one of my early wild card slots when we were in the last 5 weeks or something, but they did not end up getting into it in the end. But, I mean, do you want to see St. Louis Rampardos make it back to the playoffs and have another chance at the finals? Do you want to see, the Carolina Keldios, a team that, on paper looks great, but because of the coach, I'm not saying anything bad against the coach because he's not a Wi-Fi battler like how the Real Maril's coach does a lot more competitive Wi-Fi style battlings. Durham Druddigons, I know they do more of I've seen him do more Pokemon Showdown type things for it, but has that battling aspect on it. Bronx Bearticks, of course, we know that a lot of people look at Joey as one of probably the best battlers in this entire league. Dan, the St. Louis Rampardos, has done so well in so many different tournaments. He's made playoffs after playoffs after playoffs, gone to several different championships in these league style or in these draft league formats. But Pittsburgh Peaches, Carolina Keldios, I didn't see them making it, into the playoff picture, and it just surprised me so much, and I'm happy about it. I did not expect a Let's Player, as JYT Gamer, to make it into the playoffs, and he has a chance at it, and I'm happy about that. Num Nexus, coach of the Pittsburgh Pichus, I don't know, I haven't watched a whole lot of his battling styles. I know he does a lot with reporting on tier changes during the actual what's the word I'm looking for? When Smogon does tier changes, I've seen him do a lot of Let's Play type things, but I haven't seen a whole lot of competitive battles. I don't know if he does Smogon battles and whatnot, but I don't know. This is a little bit of a longer video than I wanted to do, but I've been gone for the last 2 weeks, so I needed to come back with something strong. So for those who stuck around this long, thank you very much, for that. But I will be back, hopefully on Tuesday, depending on how my schedule goes, to do my week 14, week 13 was last week, my week 14 review and rankings video properly, hopefully, as well. But thank you all very much for watching. You have yourselves a good time. Take care, and goodbye.